Hello, guys and gals, and we will be reading from the Harvard Classics, and we'll be probably reading from Plato again today. So let's see. We're going to go over, of course, the copyright information here. This is the Harvard Classics, the Apology, Phaedo, and Credo of Plato, translated by Benjamin Jowett. The Golden Sayings of Epictetus, translated by Hastings Crossley, and the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, translated by George Long, is edited by Charles W. Eliot, LLD, with introduction and notes. And this is by Grolier Enterprises. It says Grolier Enterprises Incorporated. Okay, this is copyright 1980, 1937, and 1907 by Grolier Enterprises Corporation, manufactured in the United States. And let's see where we left off. I know we left off with Phaedo. And they were talking about finding ultimate truth, I believe, and how the world is composed of opposites. The world is always composed of two opposing forces. And so they were discussing that. Now, I don't remember where we left off. So we're going to probably start. I don't remember exactly where we left off because it's been a week. So, okay, we're going to start right here. I'm pretty sure we've already read this, but this was really fascinating. And if we acquire this knowledge before we were born and were born having it, then we also know before we were born and at the instant of birth, not only equal or the greater or the less, but all other ideas. For we are not speaking only of equality absolute, but of beauty, goodness, justice, holiness, and all which we stamp with our names of essence in the dialectic process, which we ask and answer questions. Of all this, we may certainly affirm that we acquire this knowledge before birth. That is true. Okay, wait. Let me go back a little bit further. I'm still not sure if we've read this already, so we're going to start all the way at the top of this page. It's probably going to be a repeat, but it's just for safety's sake. Then before we begin to see or hear or perceive in any way, we must have had a knowledge of absolute equality, or we could not have referred to that the equals which are derived from the senses, for to that they all aspire, and of that they fall short. That Socrates is certainly to be inferred from the previous statements. And do we not see and hear and acquire our other senses as soon as we are born? Certainly. Then we must have acquired the knowledge of the ideal equal at some time previous to this. Yes. That is to say, before we were born, I suppose. True. And if we acquire this knowledge before we were born and were born having it, then we also knew before we were born and at the instant of birth, not only equal or the greater or the less, but all other ideas, for we are not speaking only of equality absolute, but of beauty, goodness, justice, holiness, and all which we stamp with our name of essence in the dialectic process when we ask and answer questions. Of all this, we may certainly affirm that we acquire the knowledge before birth. That is true. But if after having acquired, we have not forgotten that which we acquired, then we must always have been born with knowledge and shall always continue to know as long as life lasts. For knowing is the acquiring and retaining knowledge, and not forgetting. Is not forgetting, Simmias, just the losing of knowledge? Quite true, Socrates. But if the knowledge which we acquired before birth was lost by us at birth, and afterwards by the use of the senses we recovered that which we previously knew, will not that which we call learning be a process of recovering our knowledge, and may not this be rightly termed recollection by us? Very true. For this is clear that when we perceive something either by the help of sight or hearing or some other sense, there was no difficulty in receiving from this a conception of some other thing, like or unlike, which has been forgotten and which was associated with this, and therefore, as I was saying, one of two alternatives follows. Either we had this knowledge at birth and continue to know through life, or after birth, those who are said to learn only remember, and learning is recollection only. Yes, that is quite true, Socrates. And which alternative, Simmias, do you prefer? Had we the knowledge at our birth, or did we remember afterwards the things which we knew previously to our birth? I cannot decide at the moment. At any rate, you can decide whether he who has knowledge ought or ought not be able to give a reason for what he knows. Certainly he ought. But do you think that every man is able to give a reason about these very matters of which we are speaking? I wish that they could, Socrates, but I greatly fear that tomorrow, at this time, there will be no one able to give a reason worth having. That is not. Then you are not of opinion, Simmias, that all men know these things. Certainly not. Then they are in process of recollecting that which they learned before. Certainly. But when did our souls acquire this knowledge? Not since we were born as men? Certainly not. And therefore previously? Yes. Then, Simmias, our souls must have existed before they were in the form of man, without bodies, and must have had intelligence. Unless, indeed, you suppose, Socrates, that these notions were given us at the moment of birth, for this is the only time that remains. Yes, my friend, but when did we lose them? For they are not in us when we are born. That is admitted. Did we lose them at the moment of receiving them, or at some other time? No, Socrates, I perceive that I was unconsciously talking nonsense. Then may we not say, Simmias, that if, as we are always repeating, there is an absolute beauty and goodness and essence in general, and to this which is now discovered to be a previous condition of our being, we refer all our sensations, and we, and with this, compare them, assuming this to have a prior existence. Then our souls must have had a prior existence. But if not, there would be no force in the argument. There can be no doubt that if these absolute ideals existed before we were born, then our souls must have existed before we were born. And if not the ideas, then not the souls. Yes, Socrates, I am convinced that there is precisely the same necessity for the existence of the soul before birth, and of the essence of which you are speaking. And the argument arrives at a result which happily agrees with my own notion, for there is nothing which to my mind is so evident as that beauty, goodness, and other notion of which you were just now speaking have a most real and absolute existence, and I am satisfied with the proof. Well, but is Cebes equally satisfied? For I must convince him too. I think, said Simmias, that Cebes is satisfied, although he is the most incredulous of mortals. Yet I believe that he is convinced of the existence of the soul before birth, but that that after death the soul will continue to exist in not yet proven. But that after death the soul will continue to exist is not yet proven, even to my own satisfaction. I cannot get rid of the feeling of the many of which Cebes was referring, the feeling that when the man dies, the soul must be scattered, and that this may be the end of her, for admitting that she may be generated and created in some other place and may have existed before entering the human body, why, after having entered in and gone out again, may she not herself be destroyed and come to the end? Very well, Simmias, said Cebes, and our soul, that our souls existed before we were born, was the first half of the argument, and this appears to have been proven, that the soul will exist after death as well as before birth, is the other half of which the proof is still wanting, and has to be supplied. But that proof, Simmias and Cebes, has been already given, and Socrates, if you put the two arguments together, I mean this and the former one, in which we admitted that everything living is born of the dead, for if the soul existed before birth, and in coming to life and being born can be born only from death and dying, must she not also, but she must, must she not, after death, continue to exist, since she has to be born again? Surely the proof which you desire has been already furnished. Still, I suspect that you and Simmias would be glad to probe the argument further. Like children, you are haunted with a fear that when the soul leaves the body, the wind may really blow her away and scatter her, especially if a man should happen to die in stormy weather and not when the sky is calm. Cebes answered with a smile. Then, Socrates, you must argue us out of our fears, and yet, strictly speaking, they are not our fears. But there is a child within us to whom death is a sort of hobgoblin. He, too, we must persuade not to be afraid when he is alone with him in the dark. Okay. Socrates said, "Let the voice of the charmer be applied daily until you have charmed him away. And where shall we find a good charmer of our fears, Socrates, when you are gone?" "Hellas," he replied, "is a large place, Cebes, and has many good men, and there are barbarous races, not a few, seek for him strong them all, far and wide, sparing neither pains nor money, for there is no better way of using your money. And you must not forget to seek for him among yourselves too, for he is nowhere more likely to be found." "The search," replied Cebes, "shall certainly be made. And now, if you please, let us return to the point of the argument at which we digressed." "By all means," replied Socrates. "What else should I please?" "Very good," he said. Must we not, said Socrates, "ask ourselves some question of this sort? What is that which, as we imagine, is liable to be scattered away, and about which we fear? And what again is that about which we have no fear?" And then we may proceed to inquire whether hopes and fears as to our own souls will turn upon that. "That is true," he said. "Now, the compound or composite may be supposed to be naturally capable of being dissolved in like manner as of being compounded. But that which is uncompounded, and that only, must be, if anything, is indissoluble." "Yes, that is what I should imagine," said Cebes. "And the uncompound may be assumed to be the same and unchanging, when the compound is always changing and never the same." That I also think," he said. "Then now let us return to the previous discussion. Is that idea or essence, which is the dialectical process we define as essence of true existence, whether essence of equality, beauty, or anything else. Are these essences, I say, liable at times to some degree of change, or are they each, or each, oh, sorry, or are they each of them always what they are, having the same simple, self-existent, and unchanging forms, and not admitting of variation at all, or in any way, or at any time? They must be always the same, Socrates, replied Cebes. And what should you say of the many beautiful, whether men or horses or garments or any other things which may be called equal or beautiful? Are they all unchanging and the same always, or quite the reverse? May they not rather be described as almost always changing and hardly ever the same either but with themselves or with one another? The latter, replied Cebes. They are always in the state of change, and these you can touch and see and perceive with the senses. But the unchanging things you can only perceive with the mind. They are invisible and are not seen. That is very true, he said. Well, then, he added, let us suppose that there are two sorts of existences, one seen and one unseen. One unseen. Let us suppose, then, the seen is the changing and the unseen is the unchanging. That may be also supposed. And further, is not one part of us body and the rest of us soul? To be sure. And to which class may we say that the body is more alike and akin? Clearly to the seen. No one can doubt that. And is the soul seen or not seen? Not by man, Socrates, and by seen and not seen is meant by us that which is or is not visible to the eye of man. Yes, to the eye of man. And what do we say of the soul? Is that seen or not seen? Not seen. Unseen, then. Yes. Then the soul is more like that to the unseen and the body to the seen. That is most certain, Socrates. And were, And were we not saying long ago that the soul, when using the body as an instrument of perception, that is to say, when using the senses of sight or hearing or some other sense for the meaning of perceiving through the body, is perceiving through the senses? Were we not saying that the soul, too, is then dragged by the body into the region of the changeable and wanders and is confused? The world spins around her, and she is like a drunkard when under their influence? Very true. But when returning into herself, she reflects. Then she passes into the realm of purity and eternity, and immortality, and unchangeableness, which are her which are her kindred, and with them she ever lives when she is by herself and is not let or hindered. Then she ceases from her erring ways, and being in communion with the unchanging is unchanging. And this state of the soul is called wisdom. That is well and truly said, Socrates, he replied. And to which class is the soul more nearly alike and akin, as far as many be inferred from this argument, as well as from the previous one? I think, Socrates, that in the opinion of everyone who follows the argument, the soul will be infinitely more like the unchangeable. Even the most stupid person will not deny that. And the body is more like the changing? Yes. Yet once more consider the matter in this light. When the soul and the body are united, their nature then nature orders the soul to rule and govern, and the body to obey and serve. Now, which of these two functions is akin to the divine, and which to the mortal? Does not the divine appear to you to be that which naturally orders and rules, and the mortal that which is subject and servant? True. And which does the soul resemble? The soul resembles the divine, and the body the mortal. There can be no doubt of that, Socrates. Then reflect, Cebes, is not the conclusion of the whole matter this, that the soul is in the very likeness of the divine and immortal and intelligible and uniform and indissoluble and unchangeable, and the body is in that very likeness of the human and mortal and unintelligible and multiform and dissoluble and changeable. Can this, my dear Cebes, be denied? No, indeed. But if this is true, then is not the body liable to speedy dissolution, and is not the soul almost or altogether indissoluble? Certainly. And do you further observe that after a man is dead, the body, which is the visible part of man and has a visible framework, which is called a corpse, and which would naturally be dissolved and decomposed and dissipated, and not dissolved or decomposed at once, but may remain for a good while, if the constitution be sound at the time of death, and the season of the year favorable. For the body, when shrunk and embalmed, as is the custom in Egypt, may remain almost entirely through infinite ages, and even in decay. Still there is some portions, such as the bones and ligaments, which are practically indestructible. You allow that? Yes. And are we to suppose that the soul, which is invisible in passing to the true Hades, which like her is invisible and pure and noble, and on her way to the good and wise God, whither, if God will, my soul is also soon to go, that the soul, I repeat, if this is her nature and origin, is blown away and perishes immediately on quitting the body, as the many say? That can never be, dear Simmias and Cebes. The truth, rather, is that the soul, which is pure at departing, draws after her no bodily taint, having never voluntarily had connection with the body, which she is ever avoiding, herself gathering into herself. For self-abstraction has been the study of her life. And what does this mean? But that she has been a true disciple of philosophy and has practiced how to die easily. And is not philosophy the practice of death? Certainly. That soul, I say, herself invisible, departs to the invisible world, to the divine and the immortal and rational, thriving, arriving, she lives in bliss, and is released from the error and folly of men, their fears and wild passions and all other human ills, and forever dwells, as they say of the initiated, in company with the gods. Is not this true, Cebes? Yes, said Cebes, beyond a doubt. But the soul, which has been polluted and is impure at the time of her departure, and is the companion and the servant of the body, always, and is in love with the fascinated by the body and by the desire and pleasures of the body, until she is led to believe that the truth only exists in a bodily form, which a man may touch and see and taste and use for the purposes of his lusts. The soul, I mean, accustomed to hate and fear and avoid the intellectual principles which to the bodily eye is dark and invisible and can be attained only by philosophy. Do you suppose that such a soul as this will depart pure and unalloyed? That is impossible, he replied. She is engrossed by the corporeal, which the continual association and constant care of the body has made natural to her. Very true. And this, my friend, may be conceived to be that heavy, weighty, earthy element of sight, by which such a soul is depressed and dragged down again into the visible world, because she is afraid of the invisible and of the world below, prowling about tombs and sepulchres, in the neighborhood of which, as they tell us, are seen certain ghostly apparitions of souls which have not departed pure, but are cloying with sight and therefore visible. That is very likely, Socrates. Yes, that is very likely, Cebes, and there must be the souls not of the good, but of the evil, who are compelled to wander about such places in payment of the penalty of their former evil ways of life. And they continue to wander until the desire which haunts them is satisfied, and they are imprisoned in another body, and they may be supposed to be fixed in the same natures which they had in their former life. What nature do you mean, Socrates? Let's find out in the next episode. We are going to leave that here. We have been reading from Phaedo. Phaedo by Plato. And so yeah, if you like, and this is the Harvard Classics. If you like this content, then make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you know when I upload. Also, want to support me in any way, or if you want to join the Discord server, all the information will be in the description below. And as always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.